and regulation. All you have to do is click those links. It'll open up Zoom, just request to talk and interact with the presenters, and you should have a great time interacting with them. For those of you who are staying here with us, this will continue live for ORB users and testing, and we can definitely invite that panel to come up and speak now. Colonel Diller, who's the moderator for the ORB?
All right, Michael, over to you. So people will start to come through now, but over to you to kick it off.
Very good, and thank you very much. Fabulous introduction, and what an exciting day this is for our participants. I'm really looking forward to this panel discussion, and I'd like to start with a couple of housekeeping items. Firstly, for those of you joining, you have options with respect to asking questions of the speakers, and there's a Q&A bar or a button on the bar. There's also a chat, but please use the Q&A button to posit your questions, and we'll try to get to everybody. So my name is Michael Diamond. I'm the managing partner of Nexa Capital Partners. We're an active investor and investment bank in the urban air mobility, advanced air mobility arena. And I'm very excited to be moderating this panel. The first chart is up. The title of this panel is ORB Acquisition. And I'd like to say that there are 4 panelists here, John, Mary, Jeff, and Natasha, and they are all going to give you just a tiny bit of their background. And I'm going to turn the session over to John. Please begin.
Thanks, Mike. Really appreciate your time and moderating for us today. I'm Major John Teakill, and I am the deputy for the Prime Division for AFWERX, working hard for the first Prime program, Agility Prime. And really my role is kind of multi-hatted. First, I'm one of the program managers for several of the air race and cyber companies. And then as deputy, I'm kind of challenged to keep up with Colonel Diller. He's pretty high speed. The program is high speed and industry is high speed. I have a background in flight test. So I'm kind of striving every day to apply the discipline that I learned in that flight test experience and program management to this fast-paced program. All right, Natasha, over to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Natasha Tolentino. I am the lead program manager for Agility Prime. Unlike my counterparts, I do not work in AFWERX. I actually work in the Lifecycle Management Center here at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and I work under the PEO, or the Program Executive Officer, Mr. Paul Wall. I'm super excited to talk to you about what we have going on with Agility Prime. And next, I would like to introduce Mr. Jeff Conroy.
Hi everyone, Jeff Conroy here. I'm the contracting officer and agreements officer for Agility Prime. I too, like Natasha, am not an AFWERX participant. I am also stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in the Mobility and Training Aircraft Directorate. And I am super excited as well to talk with you all and let you know what we can do in ORB Acquisition today. Next up speaking will be Major Mary Wirt.
Everyone, I'm Major Mary Wirt, one of the program managers for Agility Prime. Specifically, I'm working with Joby and all of their contracts for this effort. Background is primarily program management, a little bit of flight test, which comes in handy with this program, as you can imagine. So looking forward to answering any of your questions that you have. Thanks.
So it's back now to Major Teakill, please. If you can begin the presentation.
Great, thanks. We have a quick presentation for you about the program and our acquisition strategy, and then we can jump into Q&A from the audience and from Mr. Mike. So first of all, here's a high-level look at the Agility Prime. I'll call it the 3-year schedule to get an initial operational capability. So you see that IOC star in the mid-right into the schedule there, and that's really our target. We have 2 parallel contracting paths that our contracting officer will discuss in a minute. But the top line there shows the air race piece, also known as the innovative capability opening, with 3 areas of interest. And then below that, we have more of the traditional process, the civil process, and STTRs, where we're reaching out with matching CIBR funds and company funds. And as we go down the schedule on the left, we'll see a build-up approach to civil and DoD airworthiness certification that really enables that initial operational capability. So first you see the in-kind testing, or better known as like shared cost testing between the government and the company. So we're offering, that's where we offer government resources, test ranges, facilities, so that companies can come in and use those resources where they typically would be, the access to those is pretty challenging and definitely more expensive unless you're under some kind of DoD sponsorship. Then we have the government paid testing, where the government defines the objectives, and that helps us eventually get to the DoD airworthiness certifications, because the companies are really focused on the civil certifications, and then through some specific government paid testing, we can define the objectives to get them to the DoD certification as well. And then, as we heard earlier today, at least one of the companies is already in low rate initial production. So you see LREP contracts up there at the end of FY21. So this is kind of notional. These are definitely large milestones that can move left and right pretty easily. So our next step is kind of develop the production and service contracts that get us to that IOC once we have the airworthiness set. This next slide is about the multi-attribute Tradespace exploration, which I believe one of our NASA partners mentioned. I'm just going to quickly go over this, but we need to communicate value of eVTOLs to each of the different government stakeholders. And the way we do that is by collecting through each MAGCOMs and an organization called AFWERX, the utility and expenses that particular major command considers most important. So we collect those attributes of utility and expense that's focused on them. We use the portfolio that's in their resource bucket. So some parts of the Air Force have CV-22 aircraft and other parts do not. Some parts have C-130s, others do not. So how can we look at the entire trade space of how orbs fit within those different platforms? And this multi-attribute, this MATE study is a way to do that. So it just looks at the tactical, operational, and strategic levels of implementing orbs in our portfolio as an Air Force and communicates that value, whereas the testing communicates the capability. So we're communicating both of those to get to POM inputs, which is where we budget for acquisition of these aircraft. That's all I have for this section.
Moving over to the acquisition portion. So once we've communicated our technical data to our stakeholders and we get stakeholder buy-in, the next portion that you would see in a traditional acquisition lifecycle is that a requirement would be built and then a program would be built off of that requirement into a program executive office. What you'll find with Agility Prime is we're turning that acquisition lifecycle on its head. We are introducing the PEO and program IPT, or integrated product team support, in the very beginning of experimentation. So under the oversight of Mr. Paul Wall, we're able to have a combined integrated product team of not just traditional acquisition professionals. You'll find that we're now involving individuals who would be part of your pre-milestone A and a lot of your research, your R&D, your research and development phases. We're coming together to do this early and often. So we're bringing our testers in early and often. Because of the fact that without tests and without hard data points, we are not going to be able to achieve our objectives. So right now we want to reach IOC by FY23. In order to do that, the PEO, with my assistance being in the program office, we provide the expertise, the structure, and the resourcing in a way that has never been done before. So all of that to be said is we're working outside of the traditional requirements process that you would find in a normal acquisition life cycle. Essentially, we are trying to be the pathfinder that bridges the valley of death between the lab and the lifecycle management center. Because of the fact that this program or this technology is a little different, as we've talked about before, is we were looking at about procurement or leasing, I will tell you that we have a lot of risk to try and wrap our hands around. So what we are trying to do in the program office or in the lifecycle management office is try to figure out how to direct a lot of our resources to figure out the reliability, supportability, and affordability, and all of those other things that are important and vital to understanding what is the mission set for an eVTOL aircraft. So as the program manager in the PEO, vice a lot of my counterparts, I'm able to look at the program holistically in a way that I've never been able to do before. And to kind of caveat that, or to say how we're building down those risks, is you'll see that we have our technical risks, which are your range and test assets that WASP alluded to. Also, you have your regulatory risks. So you heard a lot about that today when earlier this week when we were talking with the FAA and the airworthiness panels. And then talking about the financial risks. So today we have a lot of investors, so please join in on the investor panel this afternoon, that are interested in how can we buy down a lot of the company risk when it comes to having to do building capital to build these eVTOL assets. So we are bringing and bridging people together to figure out best ways to buy down the risks. So the value to the Air Force, as you see, is early insight into military utility, but on the flip side, you have the value to the industry, because now you have access to resources and expertise, certifications, and so on and so forth. The entire premise of the slide is the bumper sticker. We want to expedite fielding and strengthen the industrial base by partnering with investors. So that's what we're doing here at Agility Prime. And next, I kind of want to go over what our overall strategy is. What we had talked about earlier today was the fact that we're doing two parallel processes between the ICO, the AOI, so that's one segment, and then also our SBIR and STTR. Mary Work can kind of go into a little bit more about what this means because of the fact that she is managing a program right now that has both of these processes underway. Major Work?
Thanks. So yeah, as stated, Agility Prime has multiple companies we're working with that have two different avenues of obtaining a contract for this effort. The SBIR STTR process that exists currently can award companies phase 1, 2, or 3 contracts or agreements depending on the appropriate structure. And then at the same time, concurrently, Agility Prime has started the ICO or the air race option as well. So as a program manager for Joby, for example, I'm responsible for that company and to that company. So whether they have the SBIR contractor agreement or an ICO contractor agreement or both, I'm responsible for executing both of those with the company. And that allows me to have oversight into both options they're going down, all of the deliverables that they have there, the schedules, and kind of integrate those activities into one so we get them moving forward at a faster pace. On to the next slide.
All right, so Jeff Conner here again, the Agreements and Contracting Officer. And this gets to be a little bit of the part of the presentation that tells you really how to be a participant within Agility Prime and how to receive a contract or an agreement with Agility Prime. So this slide here gives you a little bit of the authority. We are a non-traditional acquisition arm. We are not using traditional government contracting methods. So if you've ever shied away from government contracting because of all the red tape, this is the closest thing you'll get to not dealing with the government in government contracting. So we use a special authority. It allows us to go down this other transaction for prototype. Like I said, it removes a lot of the red tape. There are some key requirements to be a participant underneath that authority. You have to meet one of these 3 sub-bullets of either being at least a non-traditional defense contractor or a research institute participating to a significant degree. You have to be either a small business, or if you're not one of those two, provide 1/3 of the total cost of the prototype project be paid out of funds that are not from the federal government. So reaching non-traditionals, you basically would almost all fit into this characterization, but it is one of the items that we do have to validate and verify before we can proceed. So Agility Prime, the actual solicitation, it is an iterative process. You'll see as we move into the next slide and the following subsequent slides, the process that Agility Prime follows. But one of the nice flexibilities in dealing with Agility Prime is that at any point as your technology matures and progresses, you can move beyond the prototype phase as soon as it's deemed delivered and viable. So you can reach a mature stage much faster in this environment. if demonstrated. So if we go ahead to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about what's available as part of the Agility Prime framework. So you're basically picking this up in the later stages of the ICO framework. And this is basically after phase 3, request for prototype proposal having been approved. As a result of making it through the acquisition process, you'd be able to receive in-kind testing as part of the air race, which then would provide you in-kind support to provide the testing that Major TCAL had identified before, hopefully leading to certification of the airframe. Following that, and like I said before, you could reach the point where we're going beyond prototype and into acquisition. So that's where then either FAR-based contracts or other transaction agreements could be utilized to take you into acquisition, and then large-scale acquisition as a follow-up. So in the next slide, we'll talk specifically about Agility Prime and its IOC. And as you can see on the slide, it is an iterative process. There are multiple areas of interest. These areas of interest are available both at AFWERX, but also at beta.sam.gov under the simple search Agility Prime. Within that, you'll find the 3 areas of interest. They all talk to eVTOL. The variants come in the size and scope of the vehicle, whether it be personnel or cargo, range, duration of flight, the things that the actual equipment can complete. So with that, what you do is you'd submit to a specific AOI, the one that fits your platform the best, a solution brief or white paper. This is your phase 1 submission. It would come into the team, the technical team, and contracts, the entire Agility Prime team would conduct an evaluation on it, and then either provide feedback that says, hey, based on where you are, not necessarily viable at this time, here's where you can improve, or we'd request a phase 2 engagement. And a phase 2 engagement in a non-COVID environment would typically conducted via site survey or in-person demonstration. We've had some success with that in this past year, just through virtual communications, being able to utilize the digital tools that are available to us to do some on-site demonstrations and really engage to dig a little bit deeper into the technology. This gives you an opportunity to provide a little bit more of the technical componentry or hard data that might not have been included in phase 1. It allows the Agility Prime tech team to really engage and ask those hard questions. So then again, as a result of phase 2, you could see either a non-selection notification where you might have been missing some information or not quite ready to move forward, or you could see a selection for phase 3, which is that request for prototype proposal. So as I identified in the slide previously, that RPP would provide you the opportunity to come in and request the assistance of the government, what kind of things you could need in the realm of in-kind support to try to accelerate your path to certification. So at that point, you deal directly with myself, the agreements officer, in crafting that agreement. Like I said before, it is not a typical federal contract. They're very fluid, and we have a lot of discretion as to how we craft those. So I look forward to any questions anyone has as a result, and I will hand this back to Major TCAL to talk about the in-kind testing that's available.
Major?
Sure. Overcome my technical difficulties here. I'll pull up the slides and try to answer the in-kind testing matrix. So this is something that our integrated test team developed to give to each of the companies that participate in the air race. So if you make it through the filter process and steps of the ICO process, then you can get to an other transaction agreement and list out specifically some of these in-kind tests that you would like to do. So we have a company doing ground vibration testing, and we have a company doing full-scale propeller wind tunnel tests with us. But there's other resources available that we specifically identified, or the integrated test team identified, as opportunities for companies to use government resources in other transaction agreements. So there's a quick description here why they may want to use it if they're not familiar or haven't thought about that process quite yet in their development. And yep, that's fine. You can move on. Unless someone has some specific questions about that, maybe we can pull it up later. Those bottom line is those are some of the basic in-kind resources that we can provide. I was talking earlier about the MAPE study, and across the top left here, you can kind of see the stakeholders in that study that are providing inputs of cost and utility. So that's 6 different stakeholders, including the Marine Corps and the U.S. Coast Guard. And then on the far right, you can see the asset types that are mixed with the different ORB types. So we're not just considering pure electric vertical takeoff, we're also considering hybrid propulsion systems in the study. We're including not just the large quadcopter type designs, but also some of the longer endurance with and range designs with wings. So it's kind of provides the scope of the analytics and the output of the analytics, so that we can again show value to each of those stakeholders.
Okay. So is this the last chart? I think it is, right? Okay, John, you want to talk to this and then we'll get into questions?
Yeah, well, I'll grab that one because that's really
Yeah,
the point for anyone who's interested in the ICO. Like I said, that beta.sam.gov, if you just do a simple search, Agility Prime, it'll be one of the first returns. You can access the entire content of the solicitation there. It's also at agilityprime.com. It has all the ICOs if you go into the air race. And then finally, if you have any questions, you can email us directly at the email there. That's aflcmc.wl.agilityprime@us.af.mil or flyorbs@afwerx.af.mil. So with that, I look forward to any of the questions that we have from the group.
Great, thank you. So as the moderator, I'm going to seize control here of the questions and start to field them. It's my privilege to ask the first question. I think I'll address this to John, but others can jump in. What are the challenges and the risks that you come across working with what you refer to as non-traditional defense contractors?
Absolutely. So is this specific to testing?
It
or
could
just
be, yeah.
generically?
Generically or yeah.
Specific to testing, they're not familiar with the government ranges and the requirements for safety and just traditional processes that the Air Force requires to test on our ranges. So we have to facilitate that with test organizations and really kind of grease the wheels with the test organizations so that they understand they're not dealing with a traditional test organization, or they're not dealing with a traditional contractor where we are holding their feet to the fire on a delivery that they have to make to meet our requirements. This is, we're providing them opportunities to accelerate their test program. So it's a lot different of an interaction between the test organizations. We have to kind of go in from an Agility Prime AFWERX perspective and pre-brief these organizations exactly what's going on and how to help these companies through some of the processes that they're not familiar with. So.
Very good, thanks. Anybody else on the panel want to offer some thoughts?
So I think a little bit from just the business side of it, you know, if you're a non-traditional defense contractor, you're probably not as well versed in, you know, doing business with the government. So there are still some things that you have to do in order to play in receipt of a government contract. So some of those things you're going to have to register as a contractor. That'll require some representations and certifications on your part as an offerer as to who your business is, where you're located, what your size of your company is. So there are some of those things, but this team is really a lot more engaged in ensuring your success and helping you through those processes versus traditional acquisition, right? Traditional acquisition is you either know it or you don't.
Yeah.
Come play, submit, and if you win, you win. And if you don't, hey, I'm sorry, but you just didn't win.
Yeah.
Here, it's far more focused on the technology. So if you have good technology, this team is going to work with you to really help you through all of those other obstacles that would come into play.
Tremendous. Thank you for that answer. The next question is from Brian Garrett Glazer. It's a long question, so I'm going to summarize. Firstly, and this is a good question because of the investors that I'm anticipating are listening to your answers very carefully. Can you give any additional information about the $100 million figure reported by the Wall Street Journal this morning as to what the Pentagon intends to spend, annually or on flight testing or on related activities with eVTOLs? Any takers?
I can speak to that. So the reason why Agility Prime has become the forefront of acquisitions is because of the fact that our national defense strategy outlines the need for us to become early adopters of technology and to catapult the eVTOL industry. So we have a direct correlation between what we need to do to keep America safe and what we need to do in our industrial base to ensure we are cornering the market on the eVTOL market, right? So one of the things that I would like to disclose is the fact that we have buy-in from all over. That's part of the reason why we do these events, is to ensure that we are reaching all 50 states and all of our US territories. In fact, one of the things that we would like to talk about is the investment into Agility Prime, as you were talking about, Mr. Diamond, is the fact that with our SIBRs, we just awarded millions of dollars. I think we spent our entire portfolio budget for SIBRs on Agility Prime or eVTOL segments, and it reached all 50 states. We had submissions from all 50 states, and we had companies, or in terms of research companies that applied, 37 out of the 50 states were awarded contracts. So I can't speak to what was published today in the Wall Street Journal or speak to something that's way above my pay level, but I will tell you there is definite interest.
Excellent, excellent. So I have a question from Shern, which is, it's open-ended, but does or would Agility Prime consider providing letters of interest or intent for an ORB developer if they are also in the process of raising funds, to build prototypes or vehicles?
Anybody want to talk to the SIBR process, or could anyone speak to that? I don't want to monopolize the time.
I see Jeff smiling.
Well, yeah. So I'm looking at it from the contracting officer side, where we tend to not make commitments on the behalf of the government. I think, Natasha, you probably have the right path with the SIBR as a point of entry.
So what you'll find is Agility Prime as a program, we have not signed up to sponsor any specific program. You will find that our MAGCOMs and our stakeholders, that's part of the reason why we spend so much time communicating all of the technology and all of the companies that come across our table to our stakeholders so that we can gen up interest. And then therefore you can reach out to special commands or different MAGCOMs to get interest. Because with a SIBR, you will normally find that your technical POC is someone that is in a program office or that will be the end user of your technology. So as a program, I have not signed any memos endorsing, but I will tell you that when I was wearing a different hat in the acquisition seat, that yes, I would have signed up to sponsor a program.
Very good. I'm going to make this the last question because we're up against the time constraint, but this is from Todd Newton. I think it's a very interesting question. I think there are a lot of investors that, and hopefully listening and absorbing this conversation, who find the acquisition process overwhelming. And that's not, that's not an insult to anybody. It's just that it's complicated and it's new stuff. So one of Todd Newton has asked the question, how can we learn more about the acquisition process itself? He's referring to trying to sign in, looking for courses, things of that nature. This is as much education as it is R&D, which stands for run and do it. So is there any hope you can give us the audience about training programs or other things that can bring them along?
So I think that this would be a good opportunity to maybe Major Wart, you can talk to your perspective, because Major Wart doesn't actually work on Agility Prime full time. She is an acquisition professional in her day job, and she lends us about 10% of what she does.
Sure, thanks, Natasha. I think there are a lot of different ways you can learn about government acquisitions. Going to the SBIR website is a great way to start if you're trying to understand how that process works. I hate to say this, but Defense Acquisition University is a way that we learn a lot about acquisitions. A lot of things are published, but I would say if you're a company that's concerned about not understanding the acquisition process, especially the traditional one, but you have something that you want to bring to the table, I would say approach this team and put your questions out there. Again, we are not approaching this the same way we would approach traditional acquisitions, meaning we are here to guide and assist and to bring these companies along to get through this process and to even modify the process as needed to ensure that the companies are successful. So if you have concerns that as a company or an individual, you're not really comfortable with the acquisitions process, come to the team, bring your questions, and I'm sure that they will assist, we will assist with getting you through it.
Thank you very much. So this will conclude the presentation. We're up against the time wall here. This session has been recorded. You can access it through the Agility Prime website, and looking forward to what's going on next. I might remind everybody that there is an investor panel that started 1 or 2 minutes ago. So everybody have a good day. Hope to see you on the next panel.
Thank you, sir. Have a good time.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.